Starlink by Phil Sorrentino. Starlink is a constellation of satellites operated by SpaceX that provides internet access. Similar to Wi-Fi and the cell phone towers, Starlink provides the ability to connect your client device, phone, or computer to the internet so that you can take advantage of the many servers available. Starlink is relatively new, but may play a big part in connecting clients to servers in the future. Phil Sorrentino, who is our speaker tonight, is the secretary of the Sun City Center Computer Club and a past president of the Sarasota Computer Users Group, or STUG. He has taught a variety of beginner and advanced computer classes and writes a monthly computer article for both organizations' newsletters. He is an electrical engineer and has worked at developing computer hardware and software for his entire career. Phil is a great guy. I've known him for all these years because when he was president here at STUG, I think I followed very shortly thereafterwards, right, Phil? At any rate, he's a delightful person and I can't wait to hear his presentation tonight. And Phil has also asked that if we have any questions, please, while he's speaking, let him know by raising your hand, and you know how to do that. And he will be happy to answer. Thank you. Let's welcome Phil Sorrentino.
Well, thank you, Anne. That's quite a. I'm blushing over here from that introduction. As Anne said, Starlink is a product of SpaceX. And it would be nice to have the president of SpaceX making this presentation, but I understand he's busy. So I'm going to be doing it. No, actually, there's no connection between me and SpaceX. It's just an interest. So SpaceX may be in the future, and it might even be in your present if you have been on the cutting edge and you have an RV or a boat, but it's probably more in the future for many people. Starlink will become a critical element in the client-server technology that's used by the internet, which is really the basis for the internet operation. So what is client-server and how does it run? How does it run the internet? Client server is the way client devices connect up to the servers. The servers are large computer systems at the other end of the internet. And of course, we have small devices, phones, tablets, computers at this end of the internet. And it's only because the internet is so fast that clients and servers can be connected and they can communicate as if they were in the adjoining room. Without that speed, you wouldn't be happy with the performance you would get. You can't wait seconds for connections or information to get from the client to the server or back the other way. So what is client-server technology? It's actually a network architecture in which each computer in that network is either a client or a server. The servers are computers that run special server programs, and they share the resources of that hardware and software with the clients. The client is a computer that basically wants to get something done that the server can do for them. So they will request the server's action. And all participants in this network employ a common set of protocols, which is TCP/IP. So as it turns out, the website computers are really the servers. Website computers that you're familiar with are the servers out there on the internet, and the devices that we're using, the apps on those devices, are actually the clients. And it's that combination of client and server that allows us to get all the work that we do with our phones and computers done while being connected up to those servers that are on the other end of the internet. And in many classes, people ask, well, where are they? Well, they're out there. They're out there, and they're just in the cloud. And of course, cloud is another one of those terms that people are confused at, but they're out at the other end of the internet, but they will respond almost as if they were in the adjoining room. Let's see. I get a little message here that says a participant has enabled closed captioning who can see the transcript recording. Is that okay? Is that something I should be seeing?
You can, I think there's an X at the end. You can
Yeah, there is.
get that
I
off
can
your
just-
screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that. Okay, okay. Okay, so let's see. It seems to be locked up here when that came up. Yeah. That has locked everything up.
Bill, just click on your screen.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so
Thanks, Judy.
I did click on it. I guess you have to click on it twice. Okay, so as I said, it said all participants will employ this common set of protocols, and that set of protocols is termed TCP/IP. Stands for Transmission Control Protocol / Internet Protocol. So TCP/IP was developed by the government and was placed into the public domain. Is one of those things we can thank the government for, actually, into the public domain so that all computer systems could use it and communicate with each other. It was well adopted by the 80s, within the 80s, and it replaced all those proprietary networks that were being used by large companies. IBM had their own proprietary network, DEC had theirs, Sun had one, AT&T had one. Every large company that needed to have computer systems that were spread out had their own network. So TCP/IP replaced that. In the mid 1970s, I worked for a company that had its own network. It was, most people are familiar with, Avis Rent-A-Car. And we had a network across the whole country. And we had to maintain it. It was provided mostly by AT&T, but we maintained all the and developed all the software. So what we couldn't get onto the Sun network, we couldn't get onto the IBM network or the DEC network. It was a whole lot of networks that were independent of each other. And fortunately, TCP/IP has brought everybody together and allowed everybody to interconnect. And it is included in all computer systems that are running. So Windows systems, Mac systems, iOS, Android, Chrome OS, they all have TCP/IP embedded in them, and that's what allows them to talk to any other computer on the internet. So TCP/IP is responsible for getting packets from place to place. It provides the end-to-end connectivity on this packet switched network. The internet is a packet switched network as opposed to a circuit switched network as we had way back in the, before the 80s, 90s, as a way of communicating with telephones. So now everything is digitized, everything is digital, and TCP/IP specifies how the data should be packetized, how it should be built, how each packet should be addressed, how it should be transmitted, how it should be routed, and when it gets received, how it should be put back together. Because this is a packet switching system, and every message is divided up into small pieces. Those small pieces are transmitted, and they all don't go by the same path. Well, in practice, most of them do, but they don't have to. And when they get to the end recipient, all those pieces have to be put together so that they can then be presented to either the server if it was going to the server, or the client if it was going to the client. And TCP/IP will put them in the proper sequences so that the message that is received is exactly the message that was transmitted. And the messages will go from the client through many hops, or through many computers, to get to the final client. Here, I'm just showing a client sending a message to A, which is sending a message to B, and sending the message again to a client. So this might be somebody that was on a message switching server like WhatsApp, and just you're talking client to client. If you're talking client to server, this client down here would be replaced with a server. So for client server, here's what's really going on. We at the client, at our phone or at our tablet or computer, we're interacting with that by whatever mechanism we have available. If it's on a computer, we're using the mouse and keyboard. If you're on a phone or a tablet, you're using the screen. So if you're using the screen, you have to use hand gestures to figure out what you want to do, and you're following the prompts that are on the screen. And eventually, between the prompts that are on the screen and the hand gestures you're providing, you'll create a command that's going to go over to the server. So this is a message. That message has encapsulated what you want done, and the message as a command will go to the server. It'll go to the internet and up in the cloud, and then eventually to whatever server you've directed it to. At the server will look at the command and determine what the command needs, what needs to be done based on that command, and it will run through all the calculations. So it really is the server that's doing the heavy lifting. It's doing all the calculating, and it's figuring out the results, and then sending the results back to you, the same path over the internet back to the client. Once the client gets the results, it knows how to interpret the results, and usually just puts that up on the screen for you to view, so you can get the results of the question that you originally asked, or the information you originally asked for, via the client keyboard or the client screen. So it's really this interaction between the client, the internet, the server, and maybe the client again that gets you the final results. Now, if you just ask for one calculation, that's what you get. But typically, you're asking for a continuous sequence of information. Just think if you were using maps. Maps has got to constantly be updating the map, constantly updating where you are. So it isn't just one command and one set of results. It's a constant commands and results being generated and sent back. So there's a lot of data going on with a lot of the apps that we use. In fact, if you stop using an app like Maps and you don't turn it off, don't stop it, and you just kind of stick it in your pocket and you're out of a Wi-Fi area, that Maps is still going to be generating results for you. You may not be looking at them, you may not be taking advantage of them, but the results are still going. So if you don't have an unlimited data account, then you're going to be paying for data along the way. So anyway, this is what's going on in a nutshell. Taking advantage of the servers at the other end of the internet that's really doing the heavy lifting. So clients need to be able to connect to the internet in order to take advantage of the servers. And that's what we want to do when we use our apps. So traditionally, how do we connect up? Well, typically, if you're in a Wi-Fi area, you connect up down with your phone through the Wi-Fi router and a modem to the internet, to your internet service provider, and then that puts you on the internet, and then the servers are on the internet. If you're not in Wi-Fi area, so you're out and about, or you're on the road on I-75, flying down the road at 85 miles an hour, because it seems like everybody's always speeding on that road. You're communicating with the internet through your wireless service provider. And there the data is going up from your client device through the cell network, and it's going through the cell phone towers eventually to the internet and the server at the other end. And the cell networks used to be running 3G predominantly, but nowadays it seems like, I think 3G was actually turned off, but 4G seems to be the network that's typically doing most of the communications. And if you have a 5G phone and you're in an area where 5G is supported, well, then you're communicating at that other rate. Just to give you an idea, 3G was about a 2 megabit per second speed. 4G, you may get as much as 10 megabits per second, probably 6 to 8 to 10 at the most. And the promises of 5G are spectacular. 100 megabits wouldn't be unusual. So we're headed in the higher speed direction, but right now we're predominantly in the 4G speeds. But those are the two methods that we have now to communicate and connect our clients to the servers. So the new way is going to be the Starlink connection. And in order to get the Starlink connection set up, we'll need the Starlink satellite up here, and we'll need a transponder, a Starlink transponder, which is really a receiver transmitter and an antenna that allows us, the client devices, to connect up to this transponder. And then the Starlink satellite will be able to communicate with the Starlink gateway, which in turn is connected to the internet, and therefore all the servers that are at the other end of the internet. So what is Starlink? Well, you know what these cell phone towers are like. You can think of Starlink as cell phone towers in the sky. Each satellite would be a cell phone tower, and the way the cell phone towers transfer your communications as you're moving, these satellites will transfer your communications among the satellites so that you're always within view of a satellite. So in order to get those satellites up in the sky, we have to launch them. We have to launch the satellites. And that's where it's obvious that this has to be a development of a space company. And in fact, it's a development of SpaceX. SpaceX launches these satellites on a platform like you can see on the screen here. And when it does it, they launch 30 or 40 or 50 satellites at a time. So what I'd like to show you is a launch. Now, many of you may have seen a launch. Maybe you've seen them in person even. Unfortunately, when I click on this, I'm having a little bit of problem over here with this particular, running this particular video. So I'm going to go and get out of this and yeah, just want to get back to my, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to run it from here.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
So these are pretty exciting launches.
2, 1. Just full power. And liftoff. One-way 3.
So that's the launch from Florida. This one was done a while ago. Pretty classic launch.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
The first stage is the lower part of the rocket, and eventually the first stage is going to separate from the second stage, and it's the second stage that actually puts all of those satellites up in orbit. The shroud up at the front, the tip of that satellite, tip of that rocket right now, is where the payload is, which is where the 40 or so satellites housed. And after the first stage separates, that first stage will actually be guided back to the ground. And it's by this guidance that it will come back to Earth, land, and be able to be used in another launch. Some of these first stages have been used 5 and 6 times now. They've been doing this since 2019. You can see the timeline down here from liftoff all the way to this bearings release. I'm only going to let it go to where the first stage separates from the second stage.
Coming up, we're going to have 5 events in very
Yeah, this is where it's going to be separated.
Stage separation, stage 1 flip, second engine start 1, boost back burn, and then from there, the fairing halves will separate. So keep an eye out for those events.
Once it separates, you'll see the first stage on the left and the second stage, which is still transporting the satellites. Okay, this is where it's going to be separated.
Main engine cut off.
So that's the first stage now on the left. And it's going to start falling back to Earth. Second stage ignites, and it's the second stage now that's going to actually put the other satellites in orbit. So I'm going to stop that now and get back to the presentation, and later on we'll come back and see the actual landing of the first
now we are
stage.
in the middle of the boost back burn, which you can see on the left side of your screen there. That
Okay, are we all together here? Are we seeing the Starlink low Earth orbit?
Yes,
Yes.
you're on.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to lower the voice here. Okay, so Starlink is a low Earth orbit, or LEO, satellite constellation that's being put up there and operated by SpaceX. It aims to deliver low latency global internet coverage. Currently, it's providing satellite access coverage for over 1 million subscribers. Now, this I did a while ago, so it's probably 1.25 million or more for over 45 countries. SpaceX started launching these satellites in 2019. They're aiming at a constellation of around 12,000. Currently, again, this is an older number. It was 3,600. It could be close to 4,000 by now. The equipment cost, now this is the equipment that you would have for residential service, currently is about $600 to get the equipment. And then there's a monthly subscription fee of $110. And those are all subject to change. Starlink or SpaceX is aiming for a global mobile phone service after 2023. Well, we'll see about that. I mean, we're halfway through 23 already. So this would be an additional service besides the digital data. So they've got satellites up in the sky. They've shipped about 1 million satellite terminals, these transponders. They're shipping them into the US and Canada for testing. They've shipped them to early adopters, people who are in the higher latitudes and are looking for coverage in rural areas. And then, of course, all rural areas are possibilities eventually for this kind of connection. It has been being used by the military in the Ukraine war. The company SpaceX was originally paying for that, and they paid for it for a while, and finally said, "Well, this is not the kind of thing an individual company should be paying for." And I think the United States is now paying for that for those services, but I haven't really seen anything specific about that. It was also deployed in Southwest Florida during the Ian hurricane aftermath last year. So it's getting a lot of good operation. And of course, that's kind of the best testing they can get, actually having it being used. This is like beta testing. So Starlink, as I said, is a low Earth orbit. And here you can see low Earth orbit is here, this blue circle. And the satellites that you typically think about are geosynchronous satellites. Those are the ones that are above a particular point, and they provide things like television coverage and just anything that requires a satellite to be in one place over the Earth. But these low Earth orbit satellites are not as far up. In fact, the geosynchronous satellite is 60 times higher than the low Earth orbit satellites. So let me just go, let me just say that the low Earth orbit satellites are only about 350 miles high, whereas the geosynchronous satellites are 22,000 miles high. So the speed that the geosynchronous satellite is traveling is exactly the speed that the Earth is spinning out at that distance. So those satellites have to be going pretty fast. So let me just compare the geosynchronous satellite, which is where you would get your dish TV from, to the Starlink satellites. So the speeds for the geosynchronous satellite is about 7,000 miles an hour. The low Earth orbit satellites are traveling more than twice that speed at 17,000 miles an hour, but they're at a lower elevation. In fact, 50 miles versus 22,000 miles. So the orbit for the geosynchronous is once per day, which gives you the impression that it's right over a given space, one given point. On the other side, the Starlink satellite has an orbit in minutes. So it takes 90 minutes for it to traverse around the Earth. So it's constantly moving with regard to a place on the Earth. As far as the data connection you have, if you're getting satellite TV, it's receive only. With Starlink, it has to be receive and transmit. And as far as the delay or the latency, the TV will be 400 to 500 milliseconds, whereas with Starlink, they're looking at 20 milliseconds. That's a very, very short delay. And the data speeds that the TV is using is around 600 megabits per second. Starlink is promising over 6,000 megabits per second as it gets going. And the difference in the antenna is very large. The satellite TV uses a parabolic fixed reflector, and Starlink uses a phased array antenna that needs to follow the satellites as they're moving. So here's the connection between your client, your phone, and the servers, the internet. The client connects up to the Starlink transponder. That transponder is capable of an uplink to the satellites. And notice the uplink is in the 14 gigahertz area. From the satellite down to the Earth station, they're using about an 18 gigahertz channel. So it's not terribly wide. Once the information is gotten at the Starlink gateway, it's then available to the internet and eventually the servers. Information going back goes on an uplink connection, and here it's in the 20 gigahertz range, and it's much wider. And from the satellite down to the transponder, it's going down at in the 10 to 12 gigahertz range. So each of these links has to have its own separate bandwidth so that it can keep data going up and down constantly, well, depending on the demands of the client. So that's the way, through using the Starlink connection, the client will get to the server. So latency is very important. It shows you can't have a latency of a half a second and get the kinds of performance that we expect to get from our connection of the client to the server. You can measure latency on any of your devices. You can use the Ookla speed test, and they'll do a ping test to check for latency. Typically, you'll find it's in the 20 millisecond range, but that's typically all ground connection, all the connections throughout the country. And in fact, if it goes to another continent, it goes via underwater cables. So it's, again, wired. To give you an idea, a ping test between New York and Los Angeles will only be 80 milliseconds. So you're only going to have a 80 millisecond delay in going back and forth to the West Coast and back. So it has to be very responsive. All this is intended to show you that the latency of the satellite system is adequate to support the kinds of client-server interconnections that we're used to. So how does the ground station follow or track the moving satellite? It does that by employing a phased array antenna that points the antenna beam. It forms and points the antenna beam. So all of this is based on the fact that you can have a phased array antenna or an electronically steered array. And when you go to the Starlink website, you'll see they show you that in order for Starlink installation, you need a clear view of the sky. You know, they're showing you here, this one shows a very clear view. There's nothing interrupting the angle of view. Whereas over here, there's a building, and that'll keep you from having a clear view. And over here, they're showing foliage or trees or what have you. So you need a clear view of the sky so that you can be in constant contact with a satellite. So it's all in the antenna design. And it's amazing how much technology is built into antenna design. It's all electromagnetic waves and Maxwell's equations. And I look at this, and hopefully some people are quite familiar with this. I look at it and I realize when I graduated, I was familiar with this, and that actually made sense, but not so much anymore. So there's a lot of Maxwell's equations. Maxwell's equations relate to electric and magnetic fields to each other and the electric charges and currents that are generated. Maxwell devised a set of equations that sought to explain the behavior of electromagnetic fields as they propagate in the atmosphere, helping to explain the transmission of electronic radio signals. So an understanding of all of this, in addition to Gauss's law for static and magnetic electric fields, Faraday's laws, Ampere's laws, there's an awful lot of physics behind all of this. But when you get through all of that, you can build and design a phased array antenna. Now, a phased array antenna is actually a mixture, a grid of a large number of antennas. And each one of these antennas, you could have a grid of antennas, so grid of antennas in the X direction, and a grid of antenna, or a collection of antennas in the X direction, a collection of antennas in the Y direction. So you have a complete grid of antennas, and each antenna has to have its phase controlled and its amplitude controlled. So the controller, again, a computer, a microcomputer, or many microcomputers are used to control the phase and amplitude of the signal that goes to each and every different antenna. So a phased array antenna is a large number of antennas in a package that is going to allow you to form a beam and then move a beam in electronic timing. So you couldn't do this with a mechanically moved antenna. Even if you could point a beam with a mechanically moved antenna, you just couldn't move it around in the times that were necessary. So a phased array antenna is what is required. So the phased array antenna design, each one of those elements is basically like this. You have antenna, digital data being presented, and the phase and amplitude being controlled. And then you have a transmit receive switch. Remember, the antenna has to be able to transmit data and also receive data. So when the antenna is in the receive position, the data is coming from the satellite, going through this TR switch. So I guess it's going down here through this limiter, then through a low noise amplifier, and then down, and its digital data is being developed and then sent over here to the client. When data is coming to be transmitted, it goes through the attenuator, which gives it the appropriate amplitude, the phase shifter, which gives it the appropriate phase, and then it goes up this path to the TR switch, which is in receive position, and then the data goes out the antenna. So this phased array antenna is, again, a collection of maybe 1,000 of these systems together, all built and coordinated and working together. So this is what they're capable of doing. All of these different phases and amplitudes create wave fronts. The wave fronts get added and subtracted. Each of these get added and subtracted together so that the final product is really a wave in an antenna beam that looks like this. So it's actually got a direction. And by changing those amplitudes and phase shifts, that beam can be moved all around. And if it's a one-dimensional beam, you can move it in one dimension. If it's a grid and you have X and Y, you can move this beam in the X and Y directions, and you can control where the information is going to and where it's going to come from based on this beam. So it's this beam that's being formed and then moved that's going to be used to track the antennas, to track the satellites. So we have a similar situation here on Earth. We have tracking a car. on I-75, you have the car moving and you have two fixed antennas. And both of those antennas are capable of developing a beam and then steering that beam, moving that beam as it needs to. So the data is going back and forth between cell tower 1 and your car, as long as it's in the appropriate position. As the car moves out of position for cell tower 1, there's a lot of control that's going on that detects that based on the signal strengths and determines which other cell tower should be controlling it. And it starts getting the information to and from cell phone tower 2 in this case. So there's a transition, and the transition is controlled by controllers, computers that are orchestrating this whole thing. And it all happens, and you going down I-75 never realize it's happening, except that you know that your transmission is never interrupted. And whatever you have going on, let's say you listen to music, there's never a change in the music. So that's the two fixed positions with one moving object problem, and that's solved here on Earth. We have, with Starlink, we have the complementary problem of one fixed position, that is the antenna on the transponder, and two satellites. So you have to have those satellites above you, and when the satellite is above you and it's in your view and things are set up, you're getting and transmitting data to that particular satellite, and that particular satellite is in control of your data. As this, well, let's say you're starting out over here. As the satellite moves across the sky, it gets to the point where the second satellite comes in place, and now the data will be going to and from the second satellite. So the beam is going to be moved from first satellite to the second satellite when the first satellite moves out of view. So it's through the wonder of these antenna systems that we can actually take advantage of a moving low Earth orbiting satellite. So satellite, Starlink is ready for you. The Starlink satellite internet is currently available. They have a certain number of satellites up there. Right now, they're offering this to people who live between 44 and 53 degrees latitude. Tampa's not in that area right now, but eventually they'll open that up and we'll be in that area. Starlink plans to be available worldwide by the end of 22. Well, they didn't meet that goal, but they're just building as time goes by. Every once in a while, you'll see, if you look at the SpaceX website, that they're launching another Starlink set of satellites. So this is what the Starlink website looks like. You can see they're interested in business orders, residential orders. They're aiming at RVs, boats, aviation. You can take a look and see what they've got there. So if you're ready, Starlink kits are ready for you. Starlink requires a clear view of the sky, as we said before. There are accessories. You can download the Starlink app to determine the best installation location. So they're willing, they're anxious to give you as much support as possible. So now we can get back and see that actual landing. This is kind of, I always think of as the more exciting part of the takeoff. And this usually happens about 8 minutes after the liftoff. So this one
Stage 1 entry burn.
starts without a
Startup.
problem. So again, on the right side
There is the
is the
start
second
of the
stage,
entry burn.
delivering the satellites. On the left side, you have the first stage falling back to Earth. And it's falling back at a great speed. Now it has to be maneuvered
Stage 1 entry burn
manipulated
shut down.
so that it gets back to the place.
Good entry burn from the first stage.
Stage 1
These,
FTS is saved.
these little fins here
Flight
are what's
termination system is
actually
safe for
guiding
stage
you
1.
and keeping it
You
vertical.
can see those attitude control
So you've got
thrusters
this
on the first stage
enormous
firing there.
pencil that you've got to
Both
keep
vehicles continue to follow
straight up and
nominal
down.
trajectories.
It's falling at a
Those
great
first and
speed.
second stages are
The only way
looking
you can
good.
slow it down is by firing the engines.
And our next milestone is
engines
the
are
stage
facing
1
the
landing
Earth.
burn, which is coming all the way back to landing zone 1 in Cape Canaveral, starting in about 15 seconds here.
Stage 1 transonic.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Start of our stage 1 landing burn.
On the right, you see it at the burn. On the left, of course, you see the
Great drone footage of the first stage that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. Incredible views from first stage coming down on
Stage
landing
1
zone
land and let
1.
deploy.
That was a beautiful
Stage 1
landing
landing approach.
beautiful landing of the first stage, and there you have it. That landing marks
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
How about that? Isn't that just extremely impressive? And that gets us to the end of the presentation. I'm more than willing to entertain questions. Or
Why
not.
don't you go ahead and unshare your screen?
Yeah.
There we go, so we can see everybody. Phil, a couple of things. One, so the satellite dish that you purchase doesn't actually move. Once it's set up, it doesn't move. There's
That's
a
right.
series of antennas in it, and it's switching back and forth between them. Is that what
Right.
you're saying?
Electronically controlled.
It's amazing.
You have to use the app that they have for you, the latitude, and it'll give you all the directions to put the antenna, to set up the antenna. But once it's set up, the beam is actually electronically steered. Only way.
Yeah, and of course, what you said that it's really geared for rural areas. It's not really geared for those of us, say in Sarasota or in Sun City,
Right.
because we've got good connections here, but in some areas they don't have any internet connection at all, and that's what this is used for. But also, and very recently, it's now available. You can get it on a lot of the cruise ships are putting a series of them of the dishes on there, and will make it available to passengers. So they're going to be able to talk if you've ever been on a cruise and try to use the internet, it's terrible. And now that's going to be improved. But they're also now making dishes that will work on a travel trailer and a motorhome as well. So when you park somewhere, you'll be able to connect from the roof of your travel trailer and get good connection to the internet if it's not available in other ways.
When you go out west, you'll find many areas that don't have a connection, easy internet connection. So there's a possibility. Yeah, SpaceX would like to talk to everybody.
Yeah, and they did this week. They were at 2,100, or was that the number of satellites up there? And they put another 22 up. But the 22 they put up are the second generation, which are bigger.
Yeah, and they've had some difficulties. I know they had to redesign something a year or two ago because they were having some problem with people who were I guess it was too much light or too much reflection or something, that they had to paint their satellites so that they wouldn't get the reflection. I don't remember the exact problem, but you know, they're making changes, and I guess this is what ends up having a second series, and they're probably more powerful.
Judy has her hand up. Judy?
Hey, Phil, absolutely fantastic. So interesting presentation. I'm a SoCal space person, way before kids. Well, not way before kids. My youngest is 53. I work for the company that made the explosive bolts for that era of satellites going up and the Challengers and things like this that didn't work. But that was just an absolute incredible presentation. I appreciate
Thank you.
just the space stuff.
Yeah.
Off to my next meeting.
Yeah, I always enjoy watching those launches and again, the landings. I did see one where they launched 2 at the same time and they landed 2 of them at just about the same time. Really incredible technology at work.
At one of our Linux workshops, we got to watch a live launch from Vandenberg, from Simi Valley. It was the top of a tower that Orv Beach is responsible for in his role as a ham radio person. So that was cool, but this was better. Thanks.
Great. Thanks.
Any other questions? Yeah, I've done several presentations on Starlink, but not the scientific and like you did. Usually just, you know, what it is and how somebody would use it. And I find it fascinating. I will probably never have one. I don't need one. I've got fiber optics coming to my house, and I get very fast speeds. But some of our viewers on my Tech for Seniors show on Mondays are using the satellite receivers, and they're getting pretty good speeds, and they're real pleased with it. Carl, you have your hand up.
Okay, I think I'm muted.
Yep.
The elevate, what you said the latitude was between 44 and 54?
55 and 40 something. Yeah. It was the northern end. That's why they've been doing it in the northern end of this country and Canada.
Yeah, but that was in 2022 when they've put up a lot of satellites since then. So I that's greatly increased, but I don't know what it is.
Well, I'm here in basically Detroit, Michigan area, and I'm at 42, but that sounds like outside the range. How could it go down to Florida?
Well, more as they put up more satellites.
Oh, this is just the current status.
Right, that's just the current status.
Okay.
They hope to be worldwide eventually.
Yeah, up until around January, all of the satellites were going in one direction, and now they've got them. I think they're going polar, or it was the other way around. I don't remember which. But it's definitely changed, and there are a lot more satellites out there.
So they're going like the GPS satellites then.
I don't know how high they are.
Well, no, I don't mean the height. I mean in terms of the polar and motion. GPS are all direct. Well, only 24 of them though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's similar, I guess. I don't know what height GPS is, but they're in motion. They're constantly in motion.
Yeah, of course, they're only one way. They only transmit one way, but all the technology is in the receiver.
Right. That's right. We don't have transmitters in our phones. Yeah.
Bill, you have your hand up.
Yeah, okay. My question is, I'm the president of our association in Venice, and I'm looking at this as a possibility for, instead of individual internet for each unit, is there a way it would be workable for the association to have that to replace Comcast?
Bill, do you have an answer?
No, I don't have an answer
I'm
to
not
that.
sure. I guess I'm not sure what the question is.
Well, she's saying instead of them having a central antenna for, say, Spectrum or one of the other
Dish
companies,
networks.
could they have a central receiver and sender for a complex?
Well, I think you can, but there are probably limits as to how many people you could put on one.
Yeah, but you know, they're talking about putting them, and they're already on some of the cruise ships, and many people are using them there. I would think that would be a similar technology. You might have to have more dishes than just one. You might have to have you'd have as many as one would supply service to. But I think, Marcia, you would find that at this point of the game, it's going to be extremely expensive.
Yeah. So's Comcast.
Yeah. I think where
this would be
Comcast, you're
more-
probably talking thousands. I'm thinking maybe hundreds of thousands
Yeah.
for the cruise ships and so on. But you can go to their SpaceX's website and probably ask them some questions. I'm sure they'll send you some answers.
Yeah.
Oh,
by all means,
that's
yeah.
true. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Steve, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the GPS satellites are usually around 12,000 miles above the surface of the Earth.
Yeah, I think
So-
that's called medium orbit, medium height
Yeah.
orbit. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, so it puts them between the LEO and the
Right.
stationary ones.
Right. Yeah, in fact, that actually showed on that one slide that I showed, the medium. Well, I didn't point it out maybe, but they did have it there. Maybe that's the reason why they had it there, because there are a lot of satellites at that level.
One thing that I found out with those GPS satellites that I thought was really cool was that they actually have to use Einstein's theory of relativity in order to position the things. There's actually a delay because of the difference in how fast time moves on the Earth as time moves in space with things moving. The faster you go, the slower time goes. And they actually have to take that effect into account when they're positioning things with GPS.
Yeah.
Just a couple of more comments that the
Go ahead.
first stage rockets now, some of them have been used 10, 12 times.
Yeah.
So that's how it's saving SpaceX a lot of money, that they're able to reuse them, and the time between uses has been shortened a lot too. So by them, but it's just amazing, like you said and showed, that they precisely put it where they want it to be. It's just, there's a round circle with an X in the middle, and that's where it lands. Just amazing.
That one landed on ground where it took off from. A lot of times they go further west and they send out a drone ship, and they actually landed on a drone ship that's out in the ocean, bobbing and weaving and going up and down, and they landed on that and then bring it in. And in addition, now they've been trying to, and I think they've successfully done it a couple of times, the covering over the satellites at the tip of the rocket, they have two fairing strips. They fall off to the sides. They've been trying to capture them after they fall. They were putting enormous nets out and then trying to fly them into those nets. Just incredible.
Yeah. Bill, turn it over to you.
Phil, fantastic. And
Glad
you're
you're
a great explainer. We really appreciate it. Although I didn't follow those equations either.
Yeah, that takes a while. Yeah.
January 28th, we expect to see you all there. It's from 12:30 to 2:30 at the Turtle Rock Recreation Center.
please plan on coming. It's going to be a nice event. We'll have some games, some socialization, and a little
some
bit of a
food.
snack as well. Okay?
All right. We'll see you there, I hope. This Sunday is the WinSig. We'll see you later. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.